I washed every plate, folded every sheet, and took care of their dog when they traveled. Then one night, my son minus law looked at me and said, "We're listing the room you're in on Airbnb. You've got 2 days." My daughter just shrugged and said, "It's not personal." But what happened when their guests arrived instead of me? It changed their lives forever. I'm 60 minus 3 years old. I'm not perfect, but I give my entire life to my kids. Every single part of me went into raising them properly. After my husband died in a steel mill accident back in 90-3, it was just me and 3 children in Pittsburgh. I didn't complain, didn't make excuses. I worked nights at a hospital cafeteria and cleaned houses during the day. I slept for hours a night, drank instant coffee, and just did whatever needed to be done. I paid off our mortgage by 2008. That house wasn't big or fancy, but it was ours. It had a porch swing I fixed myself with my own 2 hands. It had marks in the hallway where I measured the kids' heights every single year. I thought I'd die in that house, surrounded by those memories. But life doesn't always give you what you think it will. In 2020-1, I had a small stroke. Nothing dramatic or life-threatening, but enough to make the doctor say I shouldn't be living alone anymore. I was falling behind on yard work anyway, and I wasn't driving as confidently as I used to. Ellie, my youngest daughter, told me to come stay with her and her husband Jordan in Alexandria, Virginia. She made it sound like a gift, like they were doing me this incredible favor. "Mom," she said, "you took care of us for years. Let us take care of you now." I hesitated. I didn't want to be a burden. I've never liked being in someone else's space, disrupting their routine. But she insisted, kept pushing. So I sold the house. I cried the day I closed that front door for the last time. I left the porch swing there, boxed up all the photos and letters and memories, and brought 4 suitcases with me to Ellie and Jordan's house. They had a modern place. 2 stories, stainless steel appliances, hardwood floors that clicked when Max, their golden retriever, walked across them. They gave me the guest room above the garage. Ellie said it was all mine, that I could make it my own space. She even let me pick out new curtains from Target. I tried my best to be helpful. I cleaned, and I mean really cleaned. I mopped floors, wiped down baseboards, folded every piece of laundry. I learned exactly how Jordan liked his shirts hung up in the closet. I even organized their entire Tupperware drawer, matching lids to containers. When they went out of town for work or pleasure, I watched Max. I took him on walks, gave him his medications, even wiped his muddy paws when it rained. I cooked dinner almost every night. Ellie liked chicken piccata with lemon sauce. Jordan preferred barbecue ribs with dry rub seasoning. I tried to rotate the menu so they'd both be happy with their meals. I made fresh lemonade in glass pitchers, washed dishes immediately after meals, even baked banana bread every Sunday morning just because I knew they enjoyed it. I wanted to earn my keep, to prove I wasn't just some dead weight taking up space. And I never once asked them for a single dime. Then one night in March, after they came back from some business trip to Boston, everything changed. They were quiet, distant. No thanks for watching the house, no asking how things went while they were gone. They just walked in, dropped their expensive luggage, and acted like I wasn't even standing there. The next night, Jordan called me into the living room. He was sitting on their leather couch, one arm draped over the backrest, casually scrolling through his phone like this was no big deal. "Hey," he said without even bothering to look up at me. "We're putting the guest room on Airbnb. You've got 2 days to find somewhere else." At first, I thought I'd misheard him. I blinked, stared at his face, waiting for him to say he was joking. Ellie was curled up beside him on the couch, but she looked away from me, studying her fingernails like they were suddenly fascinating. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She spoke softly, almost apologetically. "It's not personal, Mom. We just need the extra income right now. We thought this arrangement was only temporary." Temporary. I had no lease, no written agreement, no legal paperwork. Just trust. Just the assumption that family meant something. I didn't say much after that. I just went back upstairs to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My chest hurt like someone had reached inside and squeezed my heart with their fist. I laid awake that entire night, staring at the ceiling, going over every single interaction in my head. I kept wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently. The next morning, I started packing slowly. I had nowhere to go, no backup plan. I called my son Aniel in Cincinnati and told him the truth about what was happening. He was absolutely leaving us. "Mom, get on a Greyhound bus and come to me right now," he said. "I'll pay for the ticket." I told him I'd think about it, but I wasn't ready to leave yet. Not like this. Not like some piece of trash thrown out on the curb for garbage collection. And it got so much worse. That same afternoon, a young couple showed up on their doorstep. A man and woman, probably in their 20s, carrying weekend bags and looking excited about their vacation rental. Jordan greeted them like they were old friends, all smiles and helpful gestures. He gave them fresh towels, showed them around the house, showed them my room. My room, where my belongings were still scattered around, where I was still actively packing my life into boxes. They didn't even wait for me to completely vacate before they handed over the keys to strangers. That's when something inside me finally snapped. I didn't raise 3 children on my own, survive crushing grief, overcome strokes and decades of poverty, just to be discarded like a broken appliance. If they wanted to treat me like some disposable tenant instead of family, then I was going to show them exactly what happens when you try to screw over someone who'd given up her entire life for the sake of family loyalty. So while they were busy helping Jason and Tara settle into their stolen accommodations, I called a locksmith. Jordan was out running errands. Ellie was upstairs pretending this wasn't happening. The guy arrived within 20 minutes. "I lost my keys and need the upstairs deadbolt changed," I told him calmly. He did it, no questions asked. $40 cash. Then I made a few strategic phone calls of my own. And that's when everything started to systematically fall apart for them. After the locksmith left, I stood in the hallway holding those new keys in my trembling hand. My hands weren't shaking from nerves because my nerves were completely dead by that point. They were shaking from something else entirely. Rage. Cold, calculating, patient rage. I didn't say anything to Ellie or Jordan that night. I just stayed out of their way, watched television, acted completely normal. The couple renting my former room, Jason and Tara, seemed nice enough. Polite, quiet, respectful. They had no idea what kind of situation they'd walked into, of course. They thought they were staying at a legitimate, properly licensed Airbnb rental. They weren't. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Much earlier. I made breakfast like I always did: scrambled eggs, buttered toast, fresh coffee in the machine. But this time, I only made enough for myself. I used to cook for everyone in the house, making sure there were extra portions. Not anymore. Jordan came downstairs around 7-30 and looked genuinely confused when he saw my single plate and coffee mug. "Where's the rest of the food?" he asked. I looked directly at him, not blinking. "I figured you'd order breakfast delivery for your paying Airbnb guests." He didn't say anything to that. Just grabbed a protein bar and left for work. Later that afternoon, while Jason and Tara were out exploring Alexandria's historic district, I walked into the guest room. They'd left the door unlocked, trusting that they were staying in a safe, professional environment. I opened the closet and stared at the empty space where my boxes of personal belongings used to be stored. Gone. Just empty shelves and freshly laundered towels. So I got to work. First, I unplugged the WI-5 router from the main modem and carefully moved it into the attic crawl space above the garage. It was dusty and cramped up there, but the router worked just fine from that hidden location. I also removed the charging cable from the main thermostat and tucked it inside a cereal box in the back of the pantry. The digital Nest thermostat started blinking read error messages later that evening. They had absolutely no idea why the heating system wasn't responding to commands. Then I started messing with the dishwasher. Nothing too obvious or dramatic, just removed the soap dispenser cartridge and hid it in my bedroom. They ran 3 complete wash cycles before figuring out that nothing was actually getting clean. They blamed the machine itself, naturally. Jordan Kirsten slammed the dishwasher door so hard I heard it upstairs. By the 3rd day, Tara came downstairs looking increasingly frustrated and tired. "Hey Jordan," she said, holding up her smartphone with obvious irritation. "Do you know why the WI-5 has been cutting out all morning? We can't get any work done." Jordan put on his fake street customer service smile and went to reset the modem. But he couldn't find it, could he? I sat in the living room recliner, quietly crocheting a scarf, didn't even bother looking up from my needlework. By the 5th day, I decided to escalate things significantly. I called Alexandria City's owning office and filed a formal complaint about a short rental operating without proper licensing at their address. Alexandria is extremely strict about that kind of regulatory violation. I knew this because I'd spent hours researching local ordinances the minute they told me I had to leave. I also knew with absolute certainty that Jordan and Ellie didn't have the required permits. 2 days later, a city inspector arrived at the front door with a clipboard and official badge. Jordan tried to act confident and knowledgeable, but he stumbled through every single question the inspector asked. The man took detailed notes, nodded politely, and handed Jordan a formal warning notice with potential fine amounts clearly listed. That night, I heard them arguing through the bedroom wall. "You said this Airbnb thing was completely legal." Ellie's voice was high and panicked. "I thought it was. Jesus, Ellie. I didn't think they'd send someone so fast." "Well, now we can't have any guests for 2 weeks minimum, and we might get fined thousands of dollars." "Oh my God, just shut up. Let me think." I smiled to myself and kept crocheting peacefully. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Jason and Tara were originally supposed to stay for the full weeks. They checked out after exactly 7 days, saying they'd experienced unexpected issues with basic amenities and demanding a complete refund through Airbnb's resolution center. Jordan was absolutely furious, but there was nothing he could do. They packed their bags and left anyway. I held the front door open for them as they loaded their luggage into an Uber. As Tara walked past me, she leaned in and whispered, "This place has really weird energy. I hope you're okay living here." I nodded calmly. "I'm doing just fine, sweetheart. Safe travels." When the guests were finally gone and the room was empty again, I thought maybe Ellie and Jordan would apologize. Maybe ask me to stay. Maybe just admit they'd handled the situation terribly and wanted to make things right. Instead, Jordan slammed his bedroom door and didn't speak to anyone for 3 straight days. Ellie finally approached me in the kitchen while I was making chamomile tea. Her voice was soft, almost childlike. "Mom, can we please talk about this?" I waited, saying nothing. She looked exhausted, older than her 30-2 years. We didn't handle things the right way. I know that. But this living situation just isn't working out. Jordan needs his space, and we're under a lot of financial pressure right now. I stared directly into her eyes. "Do you want me gone?" I asked simply. She couldn't answer. Couldn't even look at me. That silence was louder and more painful than any screaming match could have been. So I nodded, went back upstairs, and started making more phone calls. I wasn't going to beg for a place to live in my own daughter's house. But I also wasn't leaving empty-handed, without consequences for their betrayal. Because what I discovered next made everything infinitely worse for them, and gave me exactly the ammunition I needed to finish this situation once and for all. That night, while Ellie and Jordan were locked in their bedroom having another heated argument about money and blame, I pulled out my old file box. It was one of the few precious items I'd brought from my Pittsburgh house. Inside were documents that most people would have thrown away years ago: old tax papers, legal forms, personal legal forms, personal letters, receipts from major purchases. But I keep everything. Always have. That's when I remembered something Jordan probably hoped I'd completely forgotten about. When I first moved in with them, they didn't want me to feel like some kind of freeloader or charity case. So Jordan had me sign what he called a mutual cohabitation agreement. It was informal, something he downloaded and printed off some legal website. He said it would protect both sides in case of medical emergencies or unexpected situations. I'd skimmed through it quickly and signed without thinking too hard about the specific language. But that agreement contained very specific wording about me being considered a long-term resident rather than a traditional tenant. That meant, under Virginia state law, they couldn't just kick me out with 2 days. Notice like I was some random renter behind on payments. They would need to file for formal legal eviction through the court system, and they definitely hadn't done that. They thought saying "you've got 2 days" was sufficient. They were wrong. I made photocopies of everything and emailed the documents to a tenant advocacy group in Alexandria. 2 days later, I got a detailed reply from a woman named Brianna who specialized in these exact situations. She called me that same afternoon. After I explained the entire situation from beginning to end, she said, "Oh no, they absolutely cannot do that to you. You have established legal rights as a resident. You're considered a lawful occupant under Virginia housing law. And since there's no formal rental agreement with specified terms, they would have to go through the courts for any eviction proceedings. That process could take several months, maybe longer." I almost cried when she said that. Not because I actually wanted to stay in that house with people who clearly despised my presence, but because for the first time in months, someone in authority had told me that I mattered, that I had rights, that I deserved basic human dignity. I didn't tell Ellie or Jordan about any of this legal research. I just stayed quiet, made my tea every morning, walked Max around the neighborhood, and waited patiently for the next phase of my plan to unfold. Meanwhile, things continued getting progressively worse on their end. After Jason and Tierra's brutally honest review went live on Airbnb, giving the property only 2 stars and specifically mentioning that the house felt cold, tense, and unwelcoming, Airbnb temporarily froze their entire listing pending investigation. Without that expected income, Jordan started getting increasingly paranoid and aggressive. One night, he stormed into the kitchen where I was washing my dinner dishes. "Are you deliberately messing with the thermostat?" he demanded, his face red with frustration. I looked up from my coffee mug. "Nope." "Well, it's showing offline errors again, and the WI-5 keeps cutting out." "Maybe it's a connectivity issue," I suggested innocently. He muttered something unintelligible under his breath and stormed off. The next day, an official city fine arrived in their mailbox. $1,200 for operating an unlicensed short-term rental in a residential zone. I watched Ellie open the certified letter at the kitchen counter. Her face went completely pale as she read the amount. "Jordan," she called out in panic. "Come look at this right now." He came downstairs wearing a wrinkled tee-on shirt and gym shorts, took the envelope from her hands, and immediately threw it across the room in rage. "I'm not paying this bullshit," he yelled. "This is completely your mother's fault. None of these problems were happening before she moved in here." My fault. The woman who had scrubbed their toilets, fed their dog, prepared their meals, and folded their laundry for over a year. That's when I made my next strategic move. I called Daniel, my son in Cincinnati, and told him absolutely everything that had been happening. He was completely finished hearing about their mistreatment. "Mom, I'll be there this Saturday," he said firmly. "I'm renting a moving truck. You're coming to stay with us permanently. I've got plenty of space, and Sarah would love to have you here." I thanked him sincerely, but told him to wait just a little longer, because I wasn't quite done yet. That same night, I logged into a website I'd never thought I'd need to use next door, the neighborhood social network. I posted a very polite, carefully worded message, looking for recommendations on local tenant rights attorneys. My daughter and her husband attempted to evict me without proper notice after I cared for their home and pet for over a year. Just need some advice and guidance. Thank you in advance. Within hours, the post absolutely exploded with responses. People from all over the Alexandria neighborhood replied with offers of help, free legal consultations, and personal recommendations. One woman even commented, "I think I know exactly who you're talking about. That guy's a complete jerk. We stayed in their Airbnb last year, and he was incredibly rude to us." The post went completely viral within the local community. Word spread quickly through social media. Neighbors started asking pointed questions about the house with the problematic Airbnb operation. Then I received a private message from someone I never expected to hear from. Her name was Alyssa, Jordan's ex-girlfriend from before he met Ellie. She'd seen my post and recognized the address. "This might sound crazy," she wrote, "but I dated Jordan before he met your daughter. I still live in town. I can tell you things you might want to know about his business practices. Are you free to talk?" I definitely was. What she told me next blew the entire situation wide open and gave me the perfect ammunition to end this conflict permanently. Alyssa and I met at a small diner off Duke Street the next afternoon. She was in her late 30s with sharp, intelligent eyes and the rapid speech pattern of someone who doesn't waste time on small talk. She ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. "I saw your next door post. I know Jordan intimately. I know exactly how he operates, and it's always the same pattern. He treats people like gold at first, then like absolute garbage once he's gotten what he needs from them." I let her talk, because I wanted facts, not just emotional venting. She continued, "When we were together, he used to brag about cutting corners on his business dealings. He was flipping rental properties under fake LLC names to avoid paying proper taxes. I found out later that he'd even claimed tax write-offs for equipment and furniture he never actually owned. When I finally left him, he threatened to sue me over a couch. A damn couch that belonged to me in the first place." Then she pulled out her smartphone and opened an old email account. This is from his previous email address, the one he used for all the LLC paperwork and tax filings. He still has active documents linked to this account. She turned the screen toward me. I could see Jordan's full name on a digital tax form, listing Airbnb rental income under a business entity registered to a P.O. box address in Maryland. The problem was immediately obvious that income was being reported under a completely different business name. And worse, he had fraudulently listed Ellie as a co-minus owner of the Shell LLC without her knowledge or consent. I took screenshots of everything and mailed them directly to my personal account. That night, while Ellie and Jordan were asleep, I compiled every piece of evidence. I gathered tenant rights violations, cities owning violations, and now concrete proof of tax fraud. I organized everything into a single digital folder and labeled it just in case. Then I called the anonymous IRS whistleblower reporting line and provided every single detail I'd uncovered. 2 weeks later, everything began falling apart for them at an accelerated pace. It started with a thick envelope from the Internal Revenue Service, addressed to both Ellie and Jordan. They opened it together in the kitchen while I sat calmly at the counter sipping my morning tea. Jordan's voice literally cracked as he read the contents. What the hell is this supposed to mean? Ellie was visibly shaking as she held the letter. Why are they auditing us? Why are they asking about some company I've never heard of? That night, neither of them slept. I could hear constant pacing, hushed arguments, and Max whining because his owners were distressed to maintain their normal routine. Ellie cried in the bathroom at 3 a.m. The next day, I made my final exit. Daniel drove down from Cincinnati in a rented moving van. He gave me the biggest, warmest hug I'd received in months and helped me carry my belongings downstairs. Ellie tried to act like nothing unusual was happening, like this was just a normal family visit. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed defensively. Why are you leaving like this, Mom? This seems so dramatic and unnecessary. I turned and stared directly into her eyes for what I knew would be the last time. You told me this wasn't personal, I said calmly. But you made it deeply personal the minute you sold my bed to complete strangers for money. I raised you to be better than this. You didn't just fail me as a daughter. You failed yourself as a human being. Jordan couldn't even look at me. He just stood there like a coward. Before getting into Daniel's van, I handed Deli a sealed manila envelope. This contains copies of everything I discovered about your illegal business operations. Identical copies have already been sent to the IRS, the city's owning board, and a tenant rights attorney. Good luck cleaning up this mess. Her mouth literally dropped open. Jordan lunged forward like he wanted to grab the folder from my hands, but I was already safely in the passenger seat. 3 months later, I was completely settled in Cincinnati. Daniel and his wife, Sarah, gave me their guest bedroom with no strings attached, no time limits, no conditions. I had my own private bathroom, cooked when I felt like it, and never once felt like hired help or a burden. That's when I got an update call from Brianna, the tenant rights advocate. You'll want to know this, she said. Jordan and Ellie are being heavily fined by the city for multiple violations. Airbnb has permanently removed their hosting privileges. And according to my contact at the IRS, they're launching a comprehensive investigation into possible criminal tax fraud charges. A week later, Alyssa sent me another message they're getting sued by a former guest who claims there was mold in the HVAC system and no proper business licensing. The whole house might be tied up in court proceedings for over a year. I smiled genuinely for the first time in months. Then, about 6 months after I'd left Virginia, I received a voicemail from Ellie. Just one message. She sounded hollow, defeated, years older than when I'd last seen her. Mom, I don't expect you to call me back. I'm sorry. For everything. Jordan left. He took money from our joint bank account and disappeared completely. I'm trying to fix all the legal problems he created, but I understand if I never hear from you again. I never returned that call. I did pray for her because that's who I am. But I left that version of her behind, along with the version of myself who used to scrub floors, fold other people's clothes, and wait patiently for scraps of basic respect. That woman is gone forever. Now I sit on a porch swing in Cincinnati, sipping sweet iced tea and watching cardinals build nests in the oak trees. It's my son's swing, but he tells me it's mine for as long as I want it. And he means it. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting back at people who hurt you. It's about getting out with your dignity intact and making absolutely sure they understand they'll never, ever do it to you again. Not ever.